When you lose a loved one, change can be good. If you want to learn why, don't change the channel. Carolina People's coming up next. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. This morning we're at the Myrtle Beach Marriott Resort at Grand Dunes. We're focused on a special topic, till death do us part. And we're visiting with Neal, a licensed funeral director and embalmer. Good morning, Rick.
Good morning, sir.
Thanks so much for coming in early in the morning. Of course, it was so thrilling last week. I think I saw you here at the 67th annual meeting for the Myrtle Beach Area Chamber of Commerce, which was wonderful.
Large crowd, very
tremendous
nice.
Crowd. Of course, the big featured speaker last Thursday morning, Rhonda Rich, the columnist for the Herald, who was in town. Wasn't she tremendous?
Oh, she's hilarious.
Yeah, she is great.
Yeah, she done such a fine job, and she talked about Southern women being witty.
Oh, yeah.
And outsmarting us men.
Yeah, outsmarting us men. That happens daily, Rick.
Yeah,
I'm afraid.
yes.
Of course, she's going to be with us later this week. She was great enough to come back to be with us on Wednesday and Thursday. And then even very exciting, Mary Alice Monroe will be with us tomorrow. And Steve Chapman, the chairman of the board of the Myrtle Beach Area Chamber of Commerce, will be with us on Friday to wrap up the week. A lot happening in the area.
Oh, yes, sure is. Sure is.
A lot happening in the area, and unfortunately, a lot of deaths occurring in the area, Rick. And I think one special thing that a lot of folks think about is, you know, they come home after a long day, or a long day has just occurred, and something happens, and unfortunately, they lose a loved one. That experience, what should someone do? I mean, what did they go through if they haven't been in touch with a funeral home beforehand?
Well, you know, first it's the shock. I mean, you know, it takes your breath away. You just don't know what to do. But the first thing is call 911.
Call 911?
Yeah, call 911. Get the police department there. They'll contact the coroner's office, and they'll come and they'll make all the decisions, and everything has to be made. The coroner will talk to you about which funeral home, and he'll offer different funeral homes in the area for you to call. Or he'll, you know, and he'll find out if the person is going to be shipped out of town or something like that. But he'll instruct you on what to do and help you what to do.
The coroner always has to come to the scene.
Yes, unless it's a hospice death. If it's a hospice death where hospice has been there, the coroner doesn't have to be there.
You know, a lot of viewers hear the word hospice and may not understand exactly what that means. What exactly is hospice?
Well, you take a patient that's got a terminal illness, and in the last days of life, they get hospice to come in, and hospice talks with the family and helps with the family, because a lot of people likes to have their last days at home instead of being in hospital.
You know, Carol Beaudry was with us just a couple of months ago when we were at Ace Hardware up there on 79th Avenue, highlighting some of the, very close to here actually, from Mercy Hospice, highlighting that process, and of course it is covered for up to 6 months before, if the person has been recognized with a terminal illness. Yeah,
she's with Mercy Hospice, and they do a fine job.
They do, absolutely. So many tremendous hospice in the area, and obviously tremendous funeral homes. And as you mentioned, the coroner will talk about a number of funeral homes in the area.
Right, and you know, the finest thing of it is with the coroner's office is they don't try to rush you and hurry you. And when they do call a funeral home, the funeral home comes, when the funeral director gets there, they're not in a hurry. You know, they try to give you your last bit of time that they feel like you need there, you know, with the deceased person before they take them away.
Now, for you as a licensed funeral director, Rick, you're getting the call from the coroner oftentimes. Do you ever get a call at the same time they're calling 911? They then call the funeral home?
Oh, yeah, a lot of times the family, you know, if they know a funeral director, when death happens, they'll just pick up the phone and call the funeral director. And then it's our obligation to get a hold of the coroner and make the decision what has to be done. You know, to make sure that all permits, you know, the burial transit permit, that you secure from the coroner's office, and death certificate and stuff like that, to make sure everything's taken care of. Yes.
I see you're listed as a licensed funeral director and embalmer. What's the significance of the licensing? Is everyone, I know for viewers who may not have been with us last month or the month before, you've been kind enough to come back and be with us here on the show, right here at the end of each month. But some idea, what is the significance of being a licensed funeral director?
Well, a licensed funeral director can take care of all the funeral arrangements and everything like that, which they have to do. You cannot take care of funeral arrangements unless you are a licensed funeral director.
In the state of South Carolina or North Carolina, for our viewers in North Carolina, there's licensing requirements as well.
Exactly. Okay. But to embalm a person, to do the embalming process and everything, you have to be a licensed embalmer. So there's two separate licenses.
Right.
And I'm licensed in Kentucky, Tennessee, South Carolina, and I'm getting ready to write the board in North Carolina and get my license up there.
That's tremendous, Rick. Well, we think about it so oftentimes. My folks my dad's almost 80, my mother's in her late 60s. I even hate to think about that. I haven't experienced death in 15, almost 20 years, and of course that was my grandmother. For folks who really experiencing death for the first time, who haven't been through that process of working with a funeral home, what are the steps that you go through, obviously, when you get there?
Well, when we get there, the first thing we do is go in and one of us funeral directors, or someone else that's with us, we usually go in. And when we get there, we go in and try to see how the family's doing, see if what we can do to help the family right then. Then after that, whenever the family gets ready and wants us to be ready to remove the deceased from the house, we go in and move furniture back, so we can get in and out easily.
Right.
Take the family usually to another room unless they wish to be in there with us. We'll take them to another room. And then we remove the deceased from the home. And we set up a time that the family will come back to the funeral home. They may want to come in that afternoon. They may want to come in the next day.
Right.
And they may want to wait 2 or 3 days because they may have children that's out of town that they've got to make arrangements. Everyone can't just jump up and leave right then. So sometimes it could be as much as 2 to 3 days before the family gets there to make the funeral arrangements. So, and that's a lot of times, that if there's a couple that's living down here and their children lives away, and then the husband or the wife is deceased, and they're left there alone.
Who's going to stay with them if they're left alone?
Well, that's where a funeral director, if they don't have friends here and haven't made a lot of contacts, if they're new to the community or something, that's where the funeral director will step in, and he contacts one of the pastors of the church. The churches around here are very, very good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because they usually have someone, I know just like the First Baptist Church, they have people that goes to the hospital because the pastor, he can't cover everyone.
And you mean the same thing with synagogues or any place of worship?
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. They all, they all have people that goes to the hospital and helps them, or comes to the home and helps them and stays with them and works with them, make sure they have everything that they need. Helps make sure that they get all the necessary paperwork together, because when they come in to make the funeral arrangements, when it comes to the appointment time, and they come in to make the funeral arrangements, they'll need to have, Social Security number,
That's good. What are some of the things, if a viewer wants to, if they've got a pen or paper out, want to think about some of the things they're going to need, or should they just wait until that time? Is it good to be prepared now?
It's very good to be prepared ahead of time. That's just like, just to get to this, if a person wants to find out about if the man or woman is a veteran, you can go in under va.gov. And then you go down and you'll see burial benefits, and it will tell you everything that the Veterans Administration will do for you, and something like that. Or you can go under Social Security and see this on the site, on the website, and you can see exactly what they'll do.
SSA.gov, yeah.
That's right. The Social Security Administration pays $255 for if you have a dependent child or surviving spouse.
Is that right? Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
They pay that to the surviving spouse. They don't pay that to the funeral director. But you need to have your insurance information.
These are all things we'll need to take to the funeral home that someone will need to bring to the funeral home. Insurance information.
Insurance information. Bring their Social Security number. Bring their discharge or their DD-214. All the family names, anyone that they would like for the funeral director to contact for them, the minister, the people that's going to provide the music for a service and all that stuff. So there's just, it gets in depth. There's a lot of things to do. And that's why pre-planning, because while you have your your mind that's straight, you know,
Right.
you can go in and get all this taken care of.
Of course, you talk about pre-planning. What are some of the things that folks often do? I mean, for instance, now, even just let's use me as an example. What are some of the things I could be doing? Of course, my parents live in the Triangle. But if they lived here, what are some of the things that I could be doing now to pre-plan? You talked about getting some of this paperwork together. What oftentimes do families do? Are there ways to begin paying for the expenses now for a loved one a long way out?
Yeah, the funeral homes, all the funeral homes here have pre-need programs.
Okay.
And you
when
can
you
go
say
in,
that, you mean exactly.
and when they go in, they pre-plan everything. Mm-hmm. It's called a pre-need.
Right.
And they can pay it. They can pay it in payments.
Right.
They can pay it in one lump sum, and it saves them the money of having to for the charges going up at a later time.
Sure.
So it helps out a family an awful lot, especially if it's just a husband and wife that lives here, or someone like that, and the children lives away from here. Because if they've pre-planned, and you walk in and after a day of activities, you find your husband that has passed away in the bedroom, and you call the funeral director, and you've already got everything pre-planned, then you don't have to worry about getting everything together, run to the funeral home. You know who to contact, and then you have time to sit there and contact your family and let all them know.
Golly.
Everything's taken care of. The only thing that you can get right down to as far as the only thing that they would have to do is the funeral director will come to your house after everything's taken care of.
Right.
And sit down with you and bring a small paper with them and just say, all right, what day do you want the funeral services? Or what day do you want your funeral service out of town if they're going to be shipped back to another place?
I've seen some great websites of funeral homes, local funeral homes, and otherwise that has a lot of forms you can download. Much of what you're talking about there, a checklist to help remind you of things you need to be doing.
Here, you can go right online with the local funeral homes.
Right.
Local funeral homes have a pre-need program right online that you can go on their website and see it.
Absolutely. That is fantastic. You know, so oftentimes if a loved one moved down here later in life and spent much of their life, let's say in Massapequa, New York, or in the Triangle of North Carolina, they may want to be buried back close to home. What about some of the interface with cemeteries, either locally or out of area?
Well, when the cemetery is here, the funeral home will help contact the cemetery.
Good. Yeah.
They'll contact the cemetery, and they'll talk to the cemetery about it. And if you don't have lots here, the funeral director
don't have a lot here, right?
If you don't have cemetery lots here, or you don't have mausoleum space here or something, the funeral home will set an appointment for you to go over, the family will go over and speak with the people at the cemetery and get everything set up, get everything taken care of.
Right, sure.
And if it's an out-of-town cemetery, the funeral director will
do
help.
that as well.
Yeah,
Here, the local funeral directors can interface with out-of-town cemetery.
That's right, and they can, all over the world.
Right, all over the world.
Yes, sir.
Wow.
Yes, sir. When I worked with one of the local funeral homes here, we shipped people all over the world, Israel and Russia and everywhere.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That's very important to know that folks can have that opportunity to be buried anywhere, virtually anywhere. And of course,
that's right.
I guess cremation's another popular vehicle for the afterlife.
Yeah, very much. And a lot of people's turning towards cremation.
Really?
And they like to have, instead of a funeral service per se, they want to have a celebration of life. And they may wait a month to do it till the children can get together, or they may set the celebration of life in New York, of course, like you speaking. They may not have anything at all here. It all may be up there, and the funeral director here will help work with a funeral home up there, or with a minister up there. If they don't want to use a funeral home up there and just want to have a celebration of life in a church or some place like that, the funeral director here will help get everything worked out.
That's great. So often those folks are trying to help others plan, and they don't even take the time to think about themselves, Rick. I mean, plan for themselves. You've even begun to think about yourself, your family members, your loved ones, if anything unexpected ever came up.
Everything's taken care of. We make sure that, we're really strong on insurance, because death can be expensive. Especially, if you don't have insurance and you have to pay for it after medical expenses and everything. It can devastate a family.
Oh, yeah.
That sure can. So, and it can take your retirement money, stuff that you work forever. Your sickness and death can take what you've worked and saved in retirement. So it's always good to have an insurance policy. We have insurance on me and my wife, our children, and our grandchildren. We have policies on everyone because our children are younger. They don't see the importance of having insurance, but we make sure that we have everything covered.
You're in those instances, and oftentimes we're talking to others. You may not even know exactly what to go through. This was a great line. Roy Clark and his father sat in the family car in the funeral home parking lot for several minutes. As a teenager, he wasn't sure how to respond when his dad put his head in his hands and moaned, "I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say." A friend from their church had been in a car accident. She had survived, but her 3 daughters had all died when a truck hit their vehicle. What could they say to their friend at a time like this? Obviously, in the funeral industry, you're going through those steps. You're trying to think about, what do you encourage folks, loved ones surrounding around this one who's lost their immediate loved one, when family are coming in town, if they don't know what to do or how to console their loved one, what do you all say to those families?
Well, first thing, something like that also devastates us.
Right, really?
Yeah. It gets close, and gets close to home. Right. Especially when it's children and stuff like that. Just because we deal in this business every day, right, nothing's ever the same.
Yeah.
So, sometimes you really don't need to say anything. Really? Just be there.
Just listen.
That's right, and listen and hear what they want to say, and assist them in any way you can. So it's every situation is different.
Every situation.
Everyone. You never have the same thing happen over again. I've been doing this for 35 years. Well, almost 35 years. And every family that comes in, everybody wants something different. It's just, it's not a cut and dried thing. It's, it's, you have so many different requests that families want.
Right.
Different types of music. Somebody may walk in and just want organ music, and the next family may want to walk in and have a rock band play.
Right.
You never know what a family's going to have.
Oh, yeah. Great point.
Everything is different. Everything is different. And that's just like embalming and taking care of people. Everybody is different.
Right. Right. Are funeral homes ever asked by out-of-town family members to help them get organized if they're coming in from out of town? Obviously, they're trying to help spearhead if the loved one who's passed away here wants to remain here and be buried here. Are you all interfacing, or funeral homes actively, regularly asked to help out?
That's just like we can assist a family with air flight.
Right.
With bereavement flights.
Right.
And then...
What does that mean exactly?
A bereavement flight. If you've had a death in your immediate family, and you're going to be flying in, and you're the one that has to make the funeral arrangements or something, you can get a discounted price. Because it is a bereavement flight. It's something that just hits you all of a sudden.
Right.
So you have to leave just within hours. Funeral director can set every bit of that up. And then, as being here at the beach, funeral directors can set up with motels, whatever, help people,
right,
if they don't have a place to go to, because a lot of people doesn't know where to go.
Right, sure. I think a lot of folks want to know, how much am I going to have to give the funeral home? Who's going to help contact my insurance company if I have insurance? But what is something going to cost, Rick? What are some of the costs on just a basic level, or what are the range of costs that folks will be faced with?
Well, you can take a cremation and it can be $2,000 or less.
Right.
Or you can go right on up as expensive, exclusive, whatever you want to say, as you'd like. All different types of levels of service. They have all different types of options for you to choose from. So, and as far as how much you got to pay, of course, most people have some kind of an insurance.
Right.
When you come in, you give the insurance policies to the funeral director. If you give them to him first thing,
sure,
and say, here's these policies, the funeral director will go in and get his secretary, or he'll do it. He'll call the insurance company right then and say, there's been a death. And he'll report the death, and they'll immediately get the claim forms out. Sometimes they can fax the claim forms. Sometimes they'll use a standard assignment that a funeral home will have. And what an assignment is if you've got a $20,000 policy on your mom, But you don't want to spend $20,000. You want a basic cremation.
Right.
They'll sign an assignment that will just take that they send in with the claim form to the insurance company, and they will just send the funeral home the check for that amount, and you don't have to pay anything right then.
Good.
So, see, insurance is very, very important to have.
Absolutely. And how far in advance can folks begin planning? I mean, could they begin planning as early as they can?
That's right. That's just like I say, we have policies on our grandchildren.
Really?
And, yes.
Oh, come on.
Yes, and our grandchildren, and they're, when they get older, we turn them over to them.
Right. You mean to begin paying for them?
Yeah.
Right.
My mother back in Kentucky, she has policy on me. She has policy on my children. She has policy on, which would be her great-grandchildren.
Yeah, sure.
Just something, not nothing big, just something to help out in case something happens.
Right, sure.
They don't have to be $100,000 policies. That's for people, that wants to do estate planning and stuff like that. Make sure their home's paid for in case of a death or something.
Right.
But smaller policies to take care of the burial part, in case there's a death.
Right. We've just got a couple of minutes, Rick, and I think you highlight so much happens right up at the death and throughout the funeral and throughout the services thereafter. Let's say it's a couple days afterwards when many of the family have to get back home, back to the Carolinas, somewhere else. Mm-hmm. What do you encourage how do you talk to the loved one who is still here?
Well, when we were in mortuary school, we had classes in psychology. Mm-hmm. And for us to go and be able to sit with the family and talk to the family, there's a lot of things to do. Right. Small things. Change, if it's been a husband and wife and they've laid there in the bed for so many years that way, turn the bedroom around. Right. Take the bed and put it on another wall.
That's a great point, yeah.
If Dad sat in this chair and watched TV, and when you walk in the living room you expect to see Dad, turn the living room around. Take Dad's chair and put it somewhere else.
That's a great idea. What a great idea.
Clothing in the closet. Grandma's always went and put Grandpa's clothes and his underclothing and everything in one drawer, and his shirt's in the closet. Take that stuff and move it out.
Right.
Get rid of it, give it to somebody, give it to the needy, or store it away if you want to, if you're not ready to get rid of it. But then take part of grandmother's stuff and put it in grandfather's drawer, so when she goes, she's looking through those closets and those drawers for some of her clothing, so she doesn't go and see that, and see that empty drawer sitting there all the time. So,
and probably oftentimes you see folks are very resistant to that. They don't want to see the change. They want to continue thinking about that loved one, and they don't want you to touch the bed. They don't want you to move any furniture around. I guess at some point you have to be both gentle but firm as well.
That's right. That's right.
Help them break
and that's
free.
where we can talk to a daughter, and she says, "Well, Mom's having such a hard time," and we can tell daughter, "Well, you really need to do this. Right. If you'll change this around, take the dining room table and change it around. If Dad sat at the head of the table, put Mom at the head of the table. Turn the table. Do something. Just make changes. Carlyle, who was a philosopher, said, "Change indeed is painful, yet ever needful."
Ever needful.
Right.
That it is. That it is. Absolutely. That's a very good point. You would think through for you, Rick, who've been in. How long have you been in the till death do us part industry? How long have you been focused
34
on?
years.
34 years.
Yes, sir.
Son of a gun, since out of diapers. My Lord.
Old enough to be your daddy.
Well, we don't talk about stuff like that, but that's tremendous. So you've made an impact on families and loved ones, literally 34 years.
Yeah.
And you got your start in where, Rick?
Up in McCreary County, Kentucky, in southeastern Kentucky.
Right.
I started up there. Went to mortuary school in Louisville, Kentucky, the Kentucky School of Mortuary Science.
Kentucky School of Mortuary Science, yes.
Yeah, that's where I graduated from. Got my license in Kentucky and Tennessee and then South Carolina.
And then later in South Carolina.
Yeah. I just always knew I wanted to move down here.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I just love Myrtle Beach. Love Myrtle Beach. So I got my license a few years before I moved down here, before I ever made the move.
Right. Knowing that you make a difference in the Palmetto State for now and many years to come.
Yeah.
That's tremendous.
This is our home.
That's wonderful. Those are great words, Rick. Thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it so much.
Absolutely. Stay tuned to more Carolina People with Rick Neal, a licensed funeral director and embalmer, coming up next. What great words, what great words. Change indeed is painful, yet ever needful. Change indeed is painful, yet ever needful. Of course, those great words that Rick kicked it off with. Great way to kick off the week leading up to Halloween on Wednesday as we think about calling 911, being there, but also these great words from Scripture of when someone's grieving, listen, don't lecture. Listen, don't lecture. Lord, give me sensitivity to people in their grief and pain, to weep with them and show your love in ways mere words cannot attain. In ways mere words cannot attain. You heard Rick talk about it, sitting back, listening, being there for them during those tough times, but also getting firm, helping to rearrange things, possibly rearranging the bedroom or the dining room, to be there to help them in that time after the funeral, after the services. A lot has to happen during that very delicate time. Be there for folks. Make sure you listen. Don't lecture.